welcome to Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. With warmer weather on the way, it's time for some spring cleaning. And one place many households forget to look is what's under the sink and in the basement. If you're like most folks, you've got a verifiable chemistry set right at your feet. Household products labeled with words like reactive, toxic, and poisonous can be found in many common automotive, home improvement, and gardening supplies. And it's easy to forget or simply not know that these common products can be harmful to human health and the environment. The arrival of spring brings rain and an increase in the chance for flooding, which is where improper storage of hazardous household items, or HHWs, can turn a natural disaster into a public health catastrophe. To talk about proper storage and disposal of hazardous household chemicals, I'm joined by Shannon Choquette with the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources in the Division of Waste Management and Prevention, which is part of the state solid waste program. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
And so this is the time of year in spring when people usually kind of move some of their chemicals to the exit. So what should people be on the lookout for?
Yes, absolutely. So today, to help viewers understand some of the common things that we have in our homes that are household hazardous products, I brought some things from underneath my sink. So as you can see, it's really our common household cleaning products, maybe our garden supplies, hobby supplies, like if you do any woodworking or metalworking. And then also like things like arts and crafts supplies. And so some of the things you really want to look out for is typically on the back of these products, they will have sort of these what I think of as the trigger words to look for: warning, toxic, corrosive, reactive, flammable, and sometimes we'll have symbols such as this to help people know this product is something that is a household hazardous product.
Great, an easy thing to look out for. And if you see something like this, what's the best way to dispose of it?
Yes, so here in Vermont, thankfully, we have a really great collection system of household hazardous waste, either collection events or facilities. So depending on where you live in the state, you either have access to a collection event that maybe happens once or twice a year on a Saturday, or you have access to a collection facility where you can make an appointment and bring it, say, maybe during the week. It all depends on where you live in the state. But everyone has access to a collection within about 20 miles of their house. And so we really try to make it as convenient as possible for Vermonters to dispose of these.
Sure, but one thing's for sure, you shouldn't dump it down the drain or throw it in the trash, right?
No, certainly not. Our solid waste programs across the state have been working really hard for about 3 decades to get the message across that these products do not belong in the trash or down the drain, and to make it as convenient as possible to provide collection for these.
And one of those collections is ROVER. It's something I've seen at Chittenden Solid Waste District facilities. And tell me a little bit about this. It's a hazardous waste mobile unit. And so tell me a little bit more about those mobile pickups.
Yes, so those mobile pickups typically are offered by programs that do have those collection facilities. And so those programs may go to other towns in their region, collect the household hazardous products from that town, then bring it back to their facility and sort it for proper storing until the household hazardous waste company comes and picks it up. And so those events are typically in areas where you can also call and make an appointment to drop off material at the facility if you happen to miss those events.
And if you're going to one of those events or you make an appointment, what information should you be ready to tell them about the products you're bringing in?
Yes, that's a great question. So if you are going to just those one-off events, so depending on where you are in the state, they may not take appointments for events. You may just show up, have all your products hopefully in their original containers. That's super important for keeping everyone safe, knowing what's inside the containers. And so they may not need an appointment. But if you are going to a facility that takes appointments, typically they will ask you, what are you bringing, about how much, and that will help them prepare for the variety of chemicals they may see throughout the day. But what's most important truly is keeping these products in their original packaging. That will keep everyone in your household safe, everyone who deals with these products all the way through disposal safe.
And other than in their original packaging, where in your house should you keep them?
Well, where in your house you keep them really depends. Like, I know personally I don't have a garage or a shed someplace that would be maybe detached from my house. If I had someplace like that, I would store it there. You could store them in the basement or under the sink. But what is most important is that they are away from kids, away from pets, again, in their proper container, that you never mix chemicals. And so all of those things, we really just want to keep them separate and contained and away from all of the precious people in our family that we and ourselves, right? We don't want to accidentally expose ourselves to these products by mixing them together or improperly storing them.
And I'm sure your pets appreciate they're out of the way too.
Yes, exactly, yes.
And does the temperature affect them at all if they're stored outside or like in a garage that's maybe not as heated as the house, or is that not something to worry about?
Some of these products on the back of them, more so if they're flammable, you need to consider them not becoming too hot, and they would say that in the information on the back with the how to store them properly. When it comes to being too cold, I think the one consideration is paint. If paint freezes, you can't use it the next year, right? And so cold, not so much, but heat is something you want to consider.
Absolutely, a good thing to keep in mind. And we were talking a lot about stuff that you'd maybe keep under the sink, even though that might not be the best area, as we just described. But how about things that maybe a can of paint, like you mentioned, or gasoline, or solvents? Where should I keep those?
Yeah, like I mentioned, if you do have a place that's detached from the house, it's always best to keep these products that may be off-gassing out of an attached garage if possible. But otherwise, in the basement or really just anywhere that's secure is best.
And one place that we saw hazardous chemicals kind of in the limelight was after the flooding in 2023 and 2024. So tell me about how the state responded during that time.
Yes, during that time, well, we saw both a mixture of a local response and a state and federal response. And so local programs, if they had the capacity, were taking in as much flood material from their residents as possible. The state also worked with the EPA and a third-party contractor to create a household hazardous waste collection site in Middlesex at the old state police barracks. So anyone that had flood debris, household hazardous waste, could bring their material there.
And another thing to look out for when you're looking at your materials is mercury. So tell me about what items can contain that.
Yeah, so the most common items nowadays that still contain mercury are going to be your thermostat switches and your mercury bulbs. Those products, if you do have them and you're no longer using them, especially the bulbs, there are a variety of collection sites across the state that will accept those bulbs year-round, and so you don't need to wait for a household hazardous waste collection event to dispose of those.
Sure, and how about batteries? Is it the same thing?
Yes, absolutely. So things like batteries can be accepted at both transfer stations or recycling centers across the state. We have over 100 collection sites across the state for batteries, bulbs. Paint can also be accepted year-round at many retailers. And so certainly if you have a large stock of paint that you know you're not going to use, you don't need to wait for one of these events. You can check out paintcare.org and they'll have a locator to be able to find where you can dispose of your paint right in your town.
Very handy. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that you recommend doing instead of disposal is product sharing. Talk about that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we all know that, like, you know, we have such a variety of stuff in our barns, in our sheds, in our garage, or especially if you know a neighbor that may have a product that you only need a little bit of. Certainly asking to maybe just use a small amount of that than going and purchasing a large amount, or making sure that you at least just purchase the right amount and not too much. But definitely, you know, if you're painting a room a certain color that you're like, you know, maybe my neighbor can use the rest of this for a project that they're working on, it's just great to consider ways to use it up.
Sure. Also cost effective.
Yes, yes.
And another thing you recommend to kind of avoid more toxic cleaners is maybe a DIY or a more natural cleaner. Tell me about some of those.
Yes, absolutely. And so one of my favorite DIY cleaners is baking soda and vinegar and lemon. I remember when I was moving out of an apartment, my partner was watching me clean the kitchen and he was just like, "You're using so much baking soda," but I scrubbed everything up and in the end it smelled mostly like vinegar, which I mean is the scent of me of clean things.
Sure.
But also I do have some options here that are store-bought that are less toxic option. And so here we have just a basic household cleaner, and on the front it says designed for the environment, US EPA. And so that is just, you know, one of the many logos that someone could look for to purchase a less toxic option.
Sure. And a lot of these things still have their labels on them, but we were talking a little before the taping. Sometimes you'll find some products maybe cleaning out your basement or a family member's basement that are old enough they're beyond recognition. So do you accept old products as well?
Yes, absolutely. All of the collection sites, they have ways of figuring out if they can't figure out what it is, they will be able to accept it and properly dispose of it. And so when I worked for a local district and I sometimes would go to these events, you would see people come and say, oh, I'm cleaning out my grandfather's barn, or I just purchased a house and all of this stuff was left over. And a lot of it was quite old. And so yeah, certainly keeping them in their original container makes sure that no matter how old the product is, someone can look at it and properly identify it.
Yeah, that must go a really long way.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you can imagine at these events, sometimes they're quite busy. And so you have cars just flowing through, having such a variety of material. And ultimately what's most important is people's safety. You know, not just for the people bringing the material, but the people who are then going to be sorting it out. And so I really can't emphasize enough the importance of keeping them in their proper container.
Absolutely. If there's one thing someone's taking away from this,
yes, exactly. You don't
container.
don't put them in peanut butter jars. You know, a lot of times, yeah, I'd see like, you know, things that you could assume was paint thinner in a peanut butter jar, but I didn't have that ability to test it out just by my eyes. And the only way that you can know is just being able to read it.
Absolutely, a great note. And one industry that's obviously very big in Vermont and that uses some toxic chemicals as well, just as part of the gig, is farming. So should they follow the same practices as well?
Yes, absolutely. You know, farms may be working with larger amounts of chemicals, but some of them may be the same, and then they may also be using some pesticides. And so there are different programs to dispose of pesticides in the state depending on how much they make. And then farms also sometimes have access to these local collection programs as well. Again, depending on how many chemicals they create a month.
But they've got their own resources.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And for more information about safe handling and disposal of hazardous household waste, you can visit the website on your screen. That takes care of our program for today. I want to thank the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX for making this program possible. I'm Jolie Whitney. This is Across the Fence. Have a good one.